What's up, football world? I am Bucky Brooks, and this is the Bucky Brooks Show, where we take on all things football, whether it's college, pro, even high school. We'll throw all that in, but we love the conversation surrounding football, and we want to make sure that we have a great conversation today around some of the things that are buzzing around the National Football League. But before we get to talking about the National Football League and everything that is the NFL, I think it's really important that when we have colleagues that are doing great work, we dap them up. And if you haven't paid attention to the podcast Asante Samuel had called Say What Needs to Be Said, he had Coach Prime on the other day, and was an enlightening conversation. Not only enlightening because you had two guys who have been going back and forth on social media, first regarding the bicycle and T-step, which I was involved. I was in a video on NFL Network. Coach Prime came in and we talked about the advantages of using the bicycle technique versus the T-step. Asante Samuel weighed in, and it kind of created this dust up. I would say maybe unnecessarily, but you had two guys who believe in how they played going back and forth. And then the conversation continued to escalate, and it went beyond just talking about technique. It then became a comparison of players. Asante Samuel, a very accomplished player in his own right, a guy with 50-plus interceptions in the league, and Deion Sanders, who is known as the GOAT, Hall of Famer, a guy who really revolutionized the position and maybe coined the phrase lockdown, shutdown corner. And in the conversation that they had on the podcast, it not only is two guys who I really appreciate having a conversation and a debate man to man, but they also ventured into some topics that have been surrounding Coach Prime and his son, Shedeur Sanders, and the draft process. Obviously, I did a long podcast on what I heard about the process when it came to Shedeur Sanders and why he may have fallen on draft weekend, went to the fifth round, picked 144 to the Cleveland Browns. But Coach Prime addressed some of what he called the nonsense that was out there about his son, Shedeur, and maybe the rumors of the lack of preparedness that he may have exhibited during the process. Now, I'll say this. Regardless of what took place, there's no way that Shedeur Sanders should have been a fifth-round pick in this draft class. If you looked at the talent, and look, I'm going to say it, like he was the guy that I believed should have been the first or second quarterback taken in this draft class based on what he did his 4 years at Jackson State and Colorado combined, but others saw it differently. And some of the conversation and innuendo and speculation that came out from that had a lot to do with Shedeur Sanders' personality, the perceived sense of entitlement, having played what they call quote unquote daddy ball, all of those things that were negatively thrown out there to portray Shedeur Sanders as someone who was unworthy of being a top pick. Now, the great thing about the league, Shedeur Sanders will have an opportunity to prove his worth to everybody when he gets his chance in Cleveland. It is not the perfect situation for him being a fifth round pick, playing behind Dylan Gabriel, who was a third round pick, Kenny Pickett, who was a former first round pick, and Joe Flacco, the veteran, who was a Super Bowl champion. But he'll get his opportunity because, in my mind, this was the perfect marriage between system and player. And we've seen the clips, and even though it's OTAs and it doesn't mean anything, it certainly has been impressive to hear the buzz around Shedeur Sanders and how he's performed at camp. Has to continue, has to even kick up a little bit when we get into training camp and preseason games and those things. But I would say that he is a much better player than his draft position, but now it's on him to prove that. What Coach Prime did in this conversation with Asante Samuel is debunk some of the speculation and innuendo, really was adamant and persistent about the process and what he believed Shedeur Sanders didn't do in those interviews and how everyone has it wrong. But there are three sides to every story. Now, Coach Prime is a personal friend of mine. I love him. I love his family and all the things that they've done. So he's going to have his side. The teams and the anonymous sources are going to have their side. And then somewhere in between lies the truth. Regardless, the conversation should be put to bed because it doesn't really matter what happened. You get drafted when you get drafted, and then you make the best of your situation after you get picked. Shedeur have an opportunity to make the best of that situation, and hopefully it works out in his family and his father's his favor, and his father has an opportunity to maybe silence some of the naysayers that doubted the talent, the development, and maybe some of his influence on his son and the process. Regardless, you got to go to the podcast, say what needs to be said. Asante Samuel is talking to Coach Prime. It is a great conversation and a very mature conversation for two people who were coming off as bickering rivals, for them to have that man-to-man, that face-off to deal with the conflict. I love it. It speaks to the maturity and the professionalism of both guys. Make sure you check that part out. Today, what I want to talk about, some of the things that are buzzing around the league. We got the Jalen Ramsey trade on the horizon, and a lot of it is due to the fact that Jalen Ramsey, seven-time Pro Bowler, a guy who is, look, man, kind of the gold standard for defensive back play since he entered the league. He's going to be on the block. The Miami Dolphins said shortly after the season that they expected to move on from him. Some of that is maybe a cultural fit. Some of that may be a schematic fit. Regardless, they're moving on from a guy who's one of the more decorated defensive backs in the league. But they're moving on from him at a time where I think it's the perfect time for Jalen Ramsey to move on, because he's in the midst of a metamorphosis that helped a couple guys become Hall of Fame players, namely Rod Woodson and Charles Woodson, were guys that, much like Jalen Ramsey, were viewed as lockdown premier corners, the elite of the elites in terms of how they played the game on the perimeter. But both of those guys transitioned into safeties later in their careers, and it cemented their status as gold jacket guys. Jalen Ramsey has already started the process of making that change, that metamorphosis from being an elite lockdown corner to being a premier safety. He's done it at his time, first with the LA Rams, where he played a bit of the star position for Brandon Staley there. The star position is a bit of a nickel safety position. You play in the slot. You have corner, you have safety. You make a bunch of different plays in the slot. You can impact the run game. You can impact the passing game. You can come off the edge and be a disruptive pass rusher. All of those things are in play when you move somebody there. The skills that are required to play in there, high IQ, great communication skills, and you still must have the cover skills and the ball skills to make plays when they go at you one-on-one against slot receivers or the big tight ends or whoever they put out there in the slot. The thing that I like about this move for Jalen Ramsey is he is so natural and instinctive that when you watched him move into nickel and play the star position for the Rams, he was all over the place, made a ton of different plays. And I've always believed that when you have elite corners, sometimes you got to give them a different position, a new position, so you can charge them up and keep them engaged in the process. Jalen Ramsey making the transition from corner to nickel to now safety, I think he will be engaged in the process, and he'll have an opportunity to show off some of the intelligence that really made him a great player. Moreover, he could be the missing piece for a team that needs a dynamic player in the defensive backfield to set them apart from others. When we talk about the teams that could be in play, the LA Rams are naturally a fit. And part of the reason why they're a fit is because they know what they're getting back in terms of the player. He successfully played there for multiple years. He had an impact on their defense. And even though he's a little older, since he went off to Miami, got paid and is coming back, he is a wise player who will be able to drop those nuggets on the young players to help this team play elite defense in the back end. When I think about why it would work, well, it'll work because the Miami Dolphins want to unload the salary now. They waited to after June 1st, so they're saving maybe $6.7 million that they're shaving off. And then next year, the team will have to pick up $18 million, 26 to make up for the dead cap savings. But it's one of those situations where they waited to after June 1st, so they didn't have to absorb all $25 million in one calendar year. They can split it up over 2 years. So that makes the trade very attractive to them. And also what makes it attractive is Miami may have to pick up some of that salary. So we all love a discount. And right now, a team like the Rams or another team would be getting an elite player at a discount. Here's the thing, though, when we talk about Jalen Ramsey, you best have a coaching staff that is able to handle strong personality players who play with an edge. Jalen Ramsey has a strong personality. He is, opinionated in terms of what he does, but a great player, intensity, physicality, toughness, instincts, awareness, all right off the charts. But I had a coach say this a long time ago, going way, way, way back. And he said, man, it takes a wolf to coach a wolf, meaning that you can't have a sheep, a mild-mannered, passive aggressive coach trying to coach players that are alphas, high intensity, high strong, engine always revs hot. Well, I think that's important to know when it comes to dealing with Jalen Ramsey. You best have a coach or multiple coaches who can handle his personality, because he does get charged up on game day. He can be volatile when it comes to the way that he plays and how he acts and reacts to certain situations on the field. But someone on that team has to be able to talk to him, control him, walk him off the ledge, keep him on the straight and narrow when it comes to his on-field flexing at players and officials. But if you get that done, you talk about having a great player who might be entering the back half of his prime, but man, he offers so much in the twilight of his career as a guy that can transition into safety and make a ton of plays, helping a team turn the ball over. Speaking of turning the ball over, the San Francisco 49ers hired Robert Saleh. And one of the things that Robert Saleh is tasked with doing is rebuilding a defense that has fallen off in recent years. When the Niners were at their best, they were able to hit you with waves and waves of elite pass rushers off the edge. Well, those days are long gone. They have kind of moved on from the revolving door of elite playmakers or pass rushers that have been manning the lineup for years. And then they took some chances, tried to do some other things, but it now appears the Niners are back. And part of the reason why their defense is back is because Robert Saleh comes over with ideas that are in line with what this team has done. From his Jets days to what he learned when he was the defense coordinator for the Niners, he understands this team, he understands this building, he understands how to get them right. That is why the San Francisco 49ers went out and got a trade for his guy, Bryce Huff. Now, the thing about Bryce Huff, he's on a 3-year, $51 million deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. What was really a huge disappointment for them. Just couldn't get on the field, couldn't generate the sacks, wasn't disruptive, just a bad fit in terms of player and scheme and culture. But the last time he hooked up with Robert Saleh, he had a career year, a year that led to that monstrous payday that he received. I mean, this kid, got busy. 2023, that last season under Saleh, 10.5 sacks. He had 68 pressures and 312 pass attempts. That is number one amongst all players in terms of pass rush, production, pass rate, all of that stuff, being able to win in those moments. You have to love that. You also have to love that he's a high energy player that plays on the line when he's engaged and locked in and given the freedom to get after it. The reason why he struggled in Philly is because Philly is a little more of a rigid situation, rigid scheme, not a lot of variance, not a lot of freestyle, not a lot of see ball, get ball opportunities. And so it's just a different feel. But he gets a coach in Robert Saleh who knows how to get the best out of him, put him in a position to do it under his watch. He certainly believes that he can do it again. And that's why it made sense for them to take a chance on him. The other thing that made sense is the San Francisco 49ers getting back to the original recipe that helped them be very successful. When they were at their most successful, they really invested in the offensive line and defensive lines, but primarily the defensive line. At one point, man, they had first rounders galore on that front line. And even though this doesn't give them another first rounder to build around, it does give them options in terms of how they attack opposing quarterbacks. You think about Nick Bosa, Yetur Gross-Matos being available off the edge. You now have Huff coming. They can give you a few different fronts that can create problems at the point of attack. And as they go to those 5-0 fronts where they're creating one-on-one opportunities across the board, man, the scales have to tip in favor of Robert Saleh and their defense. The other thing that I'll say about Robert Saleh and the defense and him putting the finishing touches on the defense, he is really reaching back into his glorious past to bring some players that can help them right now and in the future. Chaz Surratt is a guy that can do that. When they lost Dre Greenlaw, like everyone was panicked about who are they going to find to fill the shoes and who can they make plays. And I'm just telling you, man, if Surratt is available, he is someone who is very, very talented. He's fast. He's a workout warrior. He has all those things that you look for in terms of his athletic profile. But he also is always around the ball. And he has an obsession with getting the ball, going after it. He's going to take it away by any means necessary. I just think when you look at this team and look at what Robert Saleh wants to do and how they want to play, it goes back to being able to build a bully at the point of attack. Even though it didn't go well for Bryce Huff in Philly, man, the bully could be coming out west. Scared to see what this Niners front line can do with Robert Saleh retaking over the controls. I talked a little bit last time about Travis Hunter in Jacksonville, the plan and all that other stuff. But let me tell you, man, Travis Hunter has created quite a dilemma down in Duval County. And one of the reasons why he's created this dilemma is, like most people, we all expected him to kind of play on one side of the ball and maybe get a smattering of play on the other side. But the more you do these things, these scrimmages and OTAs, the more you watch him when he has offensive days and defensive days, the more you begin to ask yourself, why not? Why can't we put him on both sides of the field and watch him impact the game? And even though I would say that I 100% believe in the two-way thing, I don't think you can do it full time just because I think it's too taxing on the body. Remember, my viewpoint of Travis Hunter is he is a wide receiver 2 DB1, meaning I see him as a secondary slot, not a secondary receiver opposite an established number 1 pass catcher. And he can do his damage away from the loaded coverage and the roll coverage and those things. That's how I view Travis Hunter. He also can make it happen on these underneath throws where he just catches and scoots out the back door and goes and scores. He can do all that. But when we talk about what he can do on defense, we're talking about someone who can really come in and be a game changer in those gotta have it situations. Some people have tried to link Hunter to Shohei Ohtani and what he does as a pitcher and hitter. Different ball of wax, but same premise. And Hunter, you have someone who, in the key moments, man, you can just trot him on the field and he knows how to go get it. Because you're giving him a small menu where he just has to learn the coverages and understand all those things, he absolutely has the aptitude to be able to do it. But pulling it off is another thing. The plan, and I've said this, look, they talk about practice plan 3 days on offense, 1 day on defense, making sure on defense he can get the work in to do the special things that are needed. But I'm going to say this, like, these are situations where you love having someone that can swipe the ball on 3rd down, red zone, 2-minute, end of game, end of half. He just has such a role that he can play because he's one of the best ball catches that we've seen. His instincts are remarkable, and he just has a ridiculous feel for understanding what is going on around him. I love it. I think I understand why the Jaguars defensive coaches love it and love him. It's because when you watch him, you watch the clips that are circulating on social about him at practice, first day in a long time on defense. Man, dude just makes every play. He understands how to get it ready. He's on it. He's confident. He does it. He is an energizer bunny who is going to take the Jaguars to the next level. Final thing, let's talk about Stephon Diggs. And Stephon Diggs, full disclosure, one of my favorite players. Loved him at Maryland. Loved how he used to get down. Great route runner. Remember him in high school just being all-world, a phenom. Has continued to be a phenom. First in Maryland, goes to Minnesota, was a 5th-round pick for whatever reason, outplays his status and contract, makes his way to the Buffalo Bills, and immediately helps Josh Allen go from good to great on the perimeter. Part of that was fueled by his fact that he had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He was a constant and consistent and reliable route runner, certain moments when you had to have it. And he's a guy who has really been able to help young quarterbacks play at their best. Going back to his time in Buffalo, when they traded for him, they had a Josh Allen who was still, man, trying to hit the strike zone, but didn't really know what to do. Well, they surround him with a vet like Stephon Diggs, and look, his game immediately shot to the top of the charts because he had a reliable, dependable weapon that he could count on in any situation. Well, I think everyone is looking for that, and that is why the New England Patriots were compelled to take him and bring him on to help them nurture Drake May as a starting quarterback. And all of that on paper looks great. In fact, on the field, when they've been together, it looks great, even though they're just conducting jog throughs and stuff like that. I think the bigger thing, though, is how does Stephon Diggs hold up off the field? And we just had a recent report where Stephon Diggs is on the boat, multiple women around, this pink substance being passed around. And so there's been these presumptions, assertions, assumptions that, hey, maybe it was pink powdery stuff, was like pink cocaine and those things. But without being there, we don't know. Regardless, it's a bad look. This is a bad look for an NFL player, an elite NFL player, to be with a handful of women and have that kind of in close proximity. Now, we don't know, but it certainly puts a cloud around him and it leads to a lot of speculation. That said, all of that outside noise is nothing if you're the head coach, Mike Vrabel of the New England Patriots, because it has no impact on it. Like, you're disappointed in those things, but it has no disappointment in it. And I would say that the reason why you're not disappointed is like, look, the maturity and those things you got to handle, but the fact that he shows up at the next OTAs and goes right to work, that's who he is and that's what they got him. And also know this, when they signed him, they knew some of the stuff that you get with him might be commonplace. And so you got to understand that, you got to know that, and you got to trust that the player is never going to put the team at risk. And Mike Vrabel came out and addressed, he talked about making good decisions. It's a conversation that you have to have because everyone has to understand that it's bigger than them. And when you have those conversations, it gives you an opportunity to turn what should be a potential loss into a lesson, and a lesson that propels you forward to make even better decisions, but to also have a story to tell when it comes with it. As it relates to the field, man, Stephon Diggs is the number one. He is going to help Drake May in so many ways because of his ability to consistently get open. You want your completion rate to go up, have wide receivers on the perimeter that consistently win so you can throw into open spaces. God does it, continues to do it. Look, I think Stephon Diggs is going to be a nice addition. They got to weather this storm, but in 2 weeks, we won't be talking about Stephon Diggs in the boat. We'll be speculating, talking about how the New England Patriots have closed the gap on their rivals. And with the teaching and coaching of Mike Vrabel, don't be surprised if there's a backdoor parlay that helps them get into the mix. So that's the pod for the day. We went through a bunch of topics. We talked about Micah Prime and Asante Samuel going through it, Jalen Ramsey, the metamorphosis, Bryce Huff reuniting with Robert Saleh, what that means for the Niners defense, the Travis Hunter dilemma where you have coaches, the defensive coaches wanting more of his time. And then finally, just talking about Stephon Diggs and why there is no way in heck that Stephon Diggs will not be a Patriot when we kick this thing off in September. But until then, make sure you rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. All things on Bleav. Man, we've got a great lineup of guys doing great stuff. Let's make sure we shout them out and give them the love and their flowers while they're here. Until next time, I'm Bucky Brooks. This was the Bucky Brooks Show. I'll talk to you soon.